back to Native Strength. I'm your host, Hyapatia Lee, and I'm glad you could join us. We're going to continue the journey around the Wheel of Life that we started in our last episode. Now, you may remember that the Wheel of Life is the most basic and important medicine wheel on the Native Strength path. By dancing around this wheel, we can open up our intuition, transform our current existence, and reach ascension. The last episode, and the one you're about to watch, will prepare you for the third step on this dance, where you will begin to see the future. This medicine wheel is the key to understanding all of the other medicine wheels. When you know the meaning of all of the directions, all the other wheels will make much more sense to you, and you will be able to do even more amazing things. It's just like learning to read the circles the aliens used to communicate in the movie Arrival. A tremendous amount of information can be shared in just one medicine wheel, but you must learn the key first. It's just like with any map. The key will show you what the symbols mean. The Wheel of Life key shows you what the directions mean. And this is integral for understanding all of the other medicine wheels and the teachings that they represent. The Wheel of Life is the key to unlocking the meaning of all the other wheels, but it contains a tremendous amount of wisdom on its own. Remember, the information came to us from the star people, who are much more advanced than us, so it is incredibly complex, but I'll break it down for you, don't worry. Now, in our last episode, we discussed the South and how it stands for many things, but one of the most important is perspective. I gave you examples of how we can change our life when we change our point of view. Medicine wheels move in a clockwise direction, so our next step will be in the Southwest. Now, the non-cardinal directions are not quite as complex, so they don't have as many attributes ascribed to them as the cardinal directions do, but that doesn't make them any less important. For example, the South stands for childhood, trust and innocence, music and art and perspective. The Southwest is associated with interpretations. You see how much simpler the Southwest is? When we try to make sense of life and prepare for the future, we use our past experiences as a guide. Sometimes the things that happened in the past were easy to understand. We may have forgotten to look when we crossed the street and almost gotten hit by a car. We can interpret this as a lesson in the result of carelessness. Most of the time, though, things are far more complicated. If we examine the events of the past and their causes and effects, we can begin to predict the future. Using the example above, we could foresee ourselves being hit by a car if we fail to look before crossing the street on a regular basis. That one's pretty obvious, but even more complex predictions can be made when we take the time to examine how we have interpreted events in our lives. This episode about the Southwest will help you to examine how you interpreted events in the past in order to get a more accurate view of what may come next in your life. It's in this direction that we make sense of life. Our experiences give us thoughts. In the example above, the thought may be, wow, I should have looked before I stepped in the street. These thoughts form into ideas like, it was really stupid of me to not look before I crossed the road. These ideas merge to form an opinion, like, I can be forgetful sometimes. Once we have formed several opinions, we begin to develop a belief. Perhaps after several simple mistakes, we may have decided that we're absent-minded. These beliefs evolve into belief systems, which validate the beliefs that we have already formed. Maybe we have noticed others like us who make similar mistakes and decided that all people who are of a certain sex or a certain profession are prone to distractions. When we bond with others that share the same belief system, we feel validated in our assumptions. We tend to make friends with those who believe the same things that we do. These friends often become support groups, and the belief systems can become philosophies, religions, or ideologies. And if we're not careful, these can trap us. As life changes and we gather more information, we need to adjust our thinking. People who don't change along with their environment get left behind. Species that don't evolve become extinct. A happy and successful person changes in order to adapt to a new environment or situation. Most changes happen gradually, so we may not even be aware that there's been a change. Over time, many minor changes may have taken place and gone by unnoticed by us because we were busy and surrounded ourselves with people who agreed with our opinions. When something isn't working out in life, it may be because something has changed that we didn't notice. To examine the beliefs we have made based on how things were in the past requires the willingness to question our ideology. Now, this is much easier said than done. It often requires strength to go against the crowd that we have become comfortable with, our friends, and sometimes even our family. To rethink a basic philosophy involves questioning what we have become comfortable with. People avoid things that make them uncomfortable. It's human nature to feel as though something bad may happen as a result of questioning what was once considered to be fact. People often shut themselves off from things that they are uncomfortable with and unfamiliar with, and things that they don't understand out of fear. They avoid these things so that they can maintain their illusion of comfort. Now, new experiences are required for learning and growth. It's through new experiences that we challenge our complacent thinking. On some level, new experiences will happen to us, whether we seek them out or not, albeit at a slower rate. Be aware, though, that if you are complacent for too long, the universe may send you a bully to catapult you forward against your will. This is another complicated lesson covered in my book, Overcoming Bullies, that will be covered in later episodes. So, we are basically forced to grow, whether we want to or not. The only choice we have in the matter is whether to resist and possibly invite a bully, or to embrace change. Native Strength is all about actively seeking growth. In our last episode, we examined the South and how it stands for many things, including our perceptions. Despite how we may feel, life does not happen to us. It happens for us. Problems are opportunities to learn and grow. Now, I know that's hard to see it that way when we're stuck in the maze of life, surrounded by struggles. But with practice, we can learn to see problems as guides in how we should navigate through life. If your work environment is abusive, you may decide that means that you should stand up for yourself, or that it may be time to move on to a better job. Or you may interpret this to mean that you are being tested and that you should put up with the abuse at all costs. If something isn't working out and is a constant source of stress or unhappiness, we have the ability to change it. If we don't seek out new experiences or new ways of dealing with problems, we can become complacent and stagnant. We've got to face our fear of the unknown. If we allow our fear to cripple us, we'll never challenge our interpretation and our beliefs. Growth is impossible without new knowledge, a good learning environment, and an open mind. If we don't grow, gather knowledge, and pass it on, we're wasting our valuable time here on Earth. Life is too short for complacency. Now, I know all of this sounds really complicated, so I'm going to give you an example of what I mean. Let's look at negative female energy in the Southwest. keep in mind that both men and women can fall into the trap of using negative female energy and becoming complacent. Nell grew up in a conservative religious family. Her father was the head of the household, and her mother always counted on him. Her mother showed by example that sacrificing for one's family was honorable and admirable. This is what God wanted women to do, to care for their families and do as their husbands requested. Nell's father took care of the family by bringing home a nice paycheck, fixing anything that needed repair, and being the rock that everyone turned to for support. After work, he relaxed in his chair while Nell's mother cooked dinner. Nell's mother looked up to him, and he made all of the necessary decisions in the family. Her mother took pride in her supportive role and was rewarded with respect and appreciation. When Nell went off to college, she remembered being told how boys will be boys and that she must keep her guard up. So she never attended fraternity parties or drank alcohol to excess. Still, one night, when she was walking home from the library, she was raped. She thought it was her fault. Her parents tried to tell her it wasn't, but somehow she felt that if a man had been there with her to protect her, she would have been safe. It seemed to her that her father had always kept her family from harm. Not too long after that, Nell found a boyfriend and married after just a few months. She liked being with him. He was like having a .38 on her hip. He could protect her from other men. She took pride in preparing nice meals for him and making the house a comfortable home, just like her mother had done. This felt right to her and made her feel good inside. Months passed, and things started to get a little rough. She told herself it was her own fault the first time her husband lost his patience with her. After all, he had been working overtime for several days and was probably just tired. The second time, she blamed the alcohol. They had been celebrating and probably had too much to drink. She probably shouldn't have said what she did that pissed him off. Next, it was his disappointment over not getting the promotion at work, the stress of the bills, the noisy neighbors, anything to keep from placing blame where it belonged, squarely on the shoulders of her abuser. She told herself that she was a good woman to put up with him and that God would reward her. Her husband would soon see the errors of his ways, and he would shower her with affection for having stood by him so faithfully. After all, that's what good women do, stand by their man. So she put up with the abuse. She thought it was safer than facing the unknown abuse that was sure to befall her if she left him. Nell would have been better off leaving the guaranteed abuse at the hands of her husband and living on her own. She had heard that ridiculous saying that the devil you know is better than the one you don't, and she believed it. Nell could have taken classes in self-defense, learned to handle a weapon, and increased her awareness of her surroundings. All of these things would have decreased the odds of her being victimized again. They would have also had the additional benefit of empowering her. She could have gone out on her own and lived the rest of her life without ever being victimized again. She interpreted her previous life experiences to mean that she was not safe without a man by her side, even if he was abusive to her. It was the negative energy of the Southwest that kept her complacent and from challenging her previous interpretation of life. Now let's look at the positive female energy in the Southwest. Again, both men and women can use positive female energy. Polly had a curious mind. Now, this had gotten her into trouble as a young child. Her teachers and parents sometimes got frustrated with her endless streams of questions. But this didn't stop her from asking. She wasn't afraid to go wherever the answers took her. So it wasn't surprising that as a young adult, she had climbed 3 of the tallest mountains in North America. She loved the view and the solitude. She loved people too, of course, but It was only when she was at the mountains that she could see the world stretched out before her. It was like a platter, offering up everything in the world to her, only for the asking. On the mountains, she could imagine things that she had never thought of before. She saw not only how things were, but how things could be. And she wanted to make the world a better place. It was there on the mountain that Polly got the idea for her business. It was a passion, something she loved, but she knew it would bring joy to others too. She didn't have a clue as to how to begin, but she was eager to start her journey. She began with research, learning everything she could about her subject in business world. While she was learning, she began networking. She went to new places, saw new people, and made many contacts that taught her more than she could have learned through research alone. When the time was right and she was ready, she reached out to these same people to begin her business. This helped her to get her company off the ground. And it wasn't long before she had a few employees and a steady stream of customers. When things went horribly wrong and the water main broke over the holiday and no one was there to help, she did all of the cleanup work by herself. She didn't expect others to come to her rescue. She knew this was her responsibility, and she handled it like a trooper. People respected her work ethic and integrity. Her employees followed her example. Now, her honor wasn't just limited to how she treated her employees. She showed her customers appreciation, and when they weren't satisfied, Polly made things right. Because of this, people kept coming back. Word spread in the community, and her business grew. When the business was too big for her to handle by herself anymore, she recognized this, and she did something about it. She realized that at some point, a highly successful company will surpass the ability of one individual to oversee all operations, and this didn't throw her off balance. She didn't try to hold on to the idea that she could manage it all by herself when other businesses of its same size were never managed by one individual. Her research had taught her these things, and she never stopped learning. You see how Polly was willing to change and adapt to the situation, no matter what it was? She didn't expect the same answer to solve every problem. Polly sought out people she could trust, and she delegated some of the responsibilities so that things ran more smoothly, and her business continued to grow. Still, when someone was sick or an emergency arose, she was not beyond fixing it herself, even if it was unclogging the toilet or pulling the weeds. She never asked any of her employees to do something she wouldn't do herself. They appreciated and respected her because of this, and continued to reward her with their loyalty and hard work. Now let's look at the negative male energy in the Southwest, which can be seen in both men and women. Nathan was a great football player. He excelled in high school and got a scholarship to college. He made all conference, but didn't get into the NFL. Nonetheless, football taught him a lot about the strategies of life and the way the world works. He learned that it was a matter of overpowering the other guy before he overpowered you. There were rules, of course, but his mantra was to do whatever it takes to win. When his best friend and he both liked the same girl, his buddy asked her out first and eventually married her. Nathan felt like he should have made the first move. He decided it was a kill or be killed world out there. He wasn't going to make that mistake again. When his boss started cutting his hours back at work, he knew what was coming. He had seen this before. If he wanted what he had deserved, he knew that he had better take it now while he had the chance. He started stealing money from the company. A little bit here, a little bit there. After all, the boss was probably skimming off the top too, right? It would never be noticed. Since he knew he was going to be fired, he made no extra effort at work and began to come in late. It wasn't long before the boss called Nathan into his office and told him he had no choice but to let him go. Nathan flew into a rage. He accused the boss of all kinds of horrible things. He even got right up in the boss's face. The boss's temper got the best of him, and he swung at Nathan, giving him just what he wanted. Soon, security was called, and Nathan was escorted from the building. Nathan's lawyer settled with the company out of court, and Nathan got a nice settlement, just as he had hoped for. When no one in the world plays fair, the one who plays the dirtiest wins, and Nathan thinks he won. Do you see that Nathan decided that aggressive behavior was the only way to succeed early in life, and that his methods became inappropriate? He failed to interpret the current situations correctly and act accordingly. Now let's examine positive male energy in the Southwest. Peter was having a rough time. He had flunked out of 2 of his classes in college last semester, and his girlfriend was pissed at him. His parents were disappointed in his grades, and he was not happy. In fact, he was depressed. He decided to go out for a walk in nature one Saturday to clear his mind. He wanted to get away from everything and focus on his life. He had to find out what was keeping him from achieving his goals and being happy. As he drove away from the city, he focused on leaving his daily worries behind. He pushed back the memories of failure and scolding from his parents and the angry voice of his girlfriend, and went within himself. When he parked his car and started his walk, he made a conscious decision that he wouldn't think of such things while he was gone. They would be right there in the car waiting for him when he returned. As he walked down the path, he asked himself why he was so unhappy. Because this isn't what I want to be doing, he immediately heard. What do I want to be doing? He cautiously asked. What came next was a surprising flood of information on the subjects he really wanted to be studying, the kind of girl he really wanted to date, and the activities he truly wanted to be involved in. None of these things were what his parents would have wished or planned for him. All of a sudden, it struck him that he had never made the choices in his life for himself. It had been assumed that he would go into the same business as his father, and he enthusiastically went along with it. It wasn't that they had forced him down this path, but their suggestions and visible desire made the young boy naturally want to please those he loved. He almost raced back to the car. He was excited to begin a new life where he followed his own dreams and desires without fear of rejection from those he loved. It didn't matter if they understood at first or not. He would be happy. And since they loved him, they would want that. No one should live their life solely for the happiness of another. Do you see how Peter was able to see how to change his life in order to find happiness? He used the positive energy of the Southwest to examine the path that led him to this unhappy spot in life. He interpreted that he had naturally fallen into a pattern to please those he loved, and that this could be changed. He placed no guilt, blame, or shame on anyone involved, and faced his fears when he decided to follow his dream. This is the positive energy of the Southwest. So, in the last episode, we looked at the South, perspective. We first have to get a clear perspective that looks at life from all directions. Today, we examine the Southwest, interpretation. Once we have a clear view, we can interpret what we see. We can change our point of view and get above our own personal labyrinth to reinterpret our world. We don't have to be a cowering Nell or a nasty Nathan when we are not afraid to examine other ways of getting our needs met. We can be like self-aware Pete and courageous Polly. We can take control of our life and redirect our path toward the future we really want. These are the first 2 steps on the wheel of life. It's important to point out that the South also stands for our childhood, trust, and innocence. So, we must change our perspective to get a clearer understanding of the world if we want to grow. This is what it means to dance the wheel of life. We take these steps to examine our behavior, learn better ways, and evolve as human beings. If we change our perspective and then adjust our interpretation of the world, we have taken the first 2 steps in this dance. Our next step is intuition. Now, this gift can only become available to us after we have taken the first 2 steps. This is a dance toward ascension, evolution, and to a higher harmony. This will free us from the limitations placed on us as children and allow us to feel like we're becoming our own person. This will also prepare us to receive many gifts like intuition that some people call magical. We don't have to put up with a bad situation because we are afraid of the unknown, like Nell, or manipulate people into a self-fulfilling prophecy, like Nathan, in order to make ourselves feel powerful. We have better choices, ones that will empower us and get us further down our path to hope, health, harmony, humor, and happiness. Take a few minutes to re-examine some of the core beliefs and philosophies that you may have formed over the years and ask yourself if these are holding you back. Is it possible that a fact about life changed over time while you were busy living? Would you be happier or more successful if you adapted to this subtle change? Don't do yourself a disservice by ignoring a new opportunity. We're often our own worst enemy when we hold ourselves back out of ignorance or fear. The whole world is available to you. Don't stop yourself from experiencing it. Our next episode in this dance around the wheel of life will bring us to intuition. I sense that you're going to want to join me for this very important and life-changing episode. I'm Hayapesha Lee, and this is Native Strength. Ay, 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 ay.